Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story...
All right, lady. This is a stick-up.
What?
Give me that jeweled watch.
Huh?
Put down that gun, you blackguard.
Hey, shut up, you dumb announcer.
Dumb announcer, am I? I'll show you. Off with this jacket.
Why, Byron, what are you doing? Put your clothes back on. What's that you're wearing under your suit?
A funny-looking suit with a big W on it, huh? Hey, stay back, buddy. Stay back or I'll shoot. Wait, why the bullets bounce right off?
And right into my foot, which is wounded now.
Now, take that, you scoundrel.
Byron, I never guessed that you were in reality
You've got to keep this a secret, Story Lady. The underworld must never learn that Byron the announcer is in reality Wonder Person.
Why not?
I forget. Anyway, you'd better get a bandage for that foot. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady will tell us how to cheat at beanbag. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today's story is one I call Robinson Crusoe. Once upon a time, there was a sailor named Robinson Crusoe. One day, when he was at sea on a big ship, a terrible storm came up from the west. Soon the entire ship had sunk, and all the men perished. All except for Robinson Crusoe, who had miraculously survived by clinging tightly to a floating piece of wood. After drifting in the sea for many days, Robinson came to a strange, uncharted island. Now he would have to plan for his survival on this seemingly deserted island. After many days of toiling, Robinson fashioned himself a nice hut and had started a victory garden. But soon he became very, very lonely, for he had seen no one on the island. So he decided to go exploring. After hours of exploring, lo and behold, he came upon a native. He ran up to him and said, "I will call you Friday." And the native looked at him and replied, "Don't call me Friday. I'll be out most of the day. Give me a buzz next Monday and maybe we can get together for lunch."
Thank you, Story Lady. Be sure and tune in again next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady will relate humorous anecdotes from the period of the Black Plague in Europe. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, children. Today's story is one I call Androcles and the Lion. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was a very brave man named Androcles. He was once the emperor's favorite soldier, but the emperor became displeased with him and made him a slave. One day, Androcles escaped and wandered through the woods, knowing that the emperor's soldiers were looking for him. Suddenly, he heard a noise nearby and ducked into a bush. As he peeked out, he saw that it was a huge lion walking nearby. Androcles became even more terrified. But then he noticed that the lion had a very large thorn in his paw and was limping. Androcles slowly came out of the bush and went up to the lion. He spoke softly to the lion and sat down next to him and gently removed the thorn. The lion thereupon ate Androcles. After the lion had rested a bit, he put the thorn back in his paw and started wandering through the woods looking for another sucker.
Thank you, Story Lady. Tune in next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady tells the heartwarming story of Androcles and the bear. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, children. Today's story is one I call The Princess and the Frog. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful young princess who lived in a castle. One day, she was walking in the garden near the castle and came to the lily pond, where she saw a frog. The princess had no friends, and she thought that the frog would make a nice companion. So she picked the frog up and took it back to her room. Suddenly, the frog spoke. "I am a handsome prince," the frog said, "but a wicked witch put a curse on me. If you kiss me, I will turn back into a handsome prince." So, of course, the princess kissed him, and he turned into a handsome prince. The next morning, the king came into the princess's bedroom to wish her a good morning and found the handsome prince there. The king immediately shot him and then punished the beautiful princess for being a tramp, and of course the king was absolutely right.
Thank you, Story Lady. Tune in again next time, boys and girls, when the story lady tells the moving and tender story of an unattractive girl who had wonderful breath. Time now for another visit with the story lady.
Hello, children. I call today's story Midas and the Fried Chicken. Once upon a time there lived a king whose name was Midas. He came from the south and just loved fried chicken. One day a poor beggar came to the castle door, and the king was very kind to him, so the beggar gave him one wish. King Midas wished that everything that he touched would turn into fried chicken, and so it was. The king touched a plate of broiled lobster, and it turned into fried chicken. He touched his throne, and it turned into a big pile of fried chicken. Soon the people in his kingdom got angry with him because even some of them got turned into fried chicken, and so they banished him. He wandered the countryside for a while, sad and forlorn, until he ran into a guy who, when he touched anything, it turned into barbecued spare ribs. So they teamed up and opened a restaurant on Highway 66 called Arnold and Midas's Chicken and Ribs, and they're doing very well.
Thank you, story lady. Tune in next time, boys and girls, when the story lady tells you a variation of this story. It's about a man who touches everybody and nothing happens except he gets slapped a lot. Time now for another visit with the story lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The Long Road. Once upon a time, there were two poor men who had to travel a long, long way from their homes to the place where they worked each day. Each day, the road seemed longer and longer. Finally, they asked a wise old man, "How can we make our journey easier?" And the wise man replied, "If one of you will tell the other a very long and interesting story along the way, the road will become shorter as you travel." The following day, one of the men told the other a very long and very interesting story, and before they knew it, they were at the end of their journey. The story had indeed made the road shorter as they traveled, and every day after that, for months and months, he told the same story again and again, but it didn't seem to work as well after that, and finally his friend hit him with a rock and told him to shut up.
Thank you, story lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the story lady will tell us the warm and moving story of the Retail Clerks Union. Time now for another visit with the story lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call An Apple a Day. Once upon a time, there was a young and beautiful princess who was very weak and was sick much of the time. The court physician would visit her almost every day to try to keep her well. Then one day, a kindly old lady came by the castle with a big basket of apples. At first, the princess did not know whether or not she should take the apples, until the kindly old lady reminded her of the old saying, "An apple a day keeps the doctor away." True, the princess remembered such a saying from when she was a little girl, and so she took the entire basket of apples. That very day, the princess felt a cold coming on. Remembering an apple a day keeps the doctor away, she ate apple after apple until she had eaten 30 of them. And since the doctor couldn't come around for a month, the cold soon developed into pneumonia.
Thank you, story lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the story lady will tell us about man's best friend, the bullwhip. Time now for another visit with the story lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The Dancing Shoes. Once upon a time, there was a young man who wanted more than anything else in the world to dance better than anyone else in the world. But alas, it seemed that this would never be true, for he was quite a clumsy young man. And then on the young man's 21st birthday, his aunt gave him a gift of a golden pair of shoes. And when he put them on, he began to dance as no one had ever danced before. And his aunt explained, "All your life you have wanted to dance. Today on your 21st birthday, all your family contributed what they had so that we might have a great magician fashion for you a magic pair of dancing shoes. And now that you have put them on your feet, you will dance and dance and dance for the rest of your life." And with that, the young man began to cry as he danced. His aunt asked, What are you afraid, that someday you will grow tired of dancing? It isn't that, he explained. It's just I wish I hadn't joined the Marines.
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady captivates us with the story of the topless dancer and the tattoo remover. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today I'm going to tell you all about Frank Merriwell. Frank Merriwell was a clean-cut, polite, wholesome boy who went to Yale College. He never smoked or drank, never said a naughty word, made straight A's in his classes, and was the best athlete in the whole world. All the guys at school truly admired him. All the girls thought he was simply wonderful, and sports fans all over the country worshipped him. He had brought honor and all kinds of trophies to his school. Then just 3 days before he was scheduled to graduate, someone discovered that Frank had once played a game for a semi-pro tetherball team in the Bronx. So they stripped him of all his awards, forfeited all of Yale's victories, threw Frank out of school, and took away his sneakers and melted them down and made them into a great big eraser.
Thank you, Story Lady. Be sure to tune in next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady will give the real facts behind the Sacco Vanzetti case. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The Singing Chicken. Once upon a time, there was a farmer who discovered that he had a singing chicken with the most beautiful voice in the world. And so he sold his farm and took the chicken with him and went to the very largest theatrical agency in all of West Bend, Indiana. There the chicken was, right in the middle of the second chorus of I'm Confessin' That I Love You, when the agent interrupted to say that while the chicken's voice was fine, he felt that the material was a bit dated and square. Besides, he handled only groups. Perhaps, he said, if you could get 3 more singing chickens and get some good new songs for them, we could do business. Dejected, the farmer left the office. He knew that he would never find any more singing chickens, and the conceited chicken he had kept insisting that the old songs were the best and would not sing anything else. And so the farmer decided that the only thing left to do was to fatten the chicken up until he was plump enough to eat. And as you know, the rest is history, Wayne Newton fans.
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady will be here to show us her glabella. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The Princess and the Flower. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was a beautiful princess who lived in a kingdom that was very, very poor. One day, it was arranged that she should marry the prince of a neighboring kingdom which was very, very rich. It was the custom in those days that no bride could go to her husband without a wonderful gift to prove her love for him. But there was nothing of value in her entire kingdom. Heartbroken, she walked sadly in her little garden when suddenly she spied a beautiful flower. It was certainly the most beautiful flower in the world. This, she said, will be the gift I take to my husband. For if I take him this most beautiful of all flowers, he will know that I love him. And she picked the flower and sniffed it, and at that very moment, a bee flew up her nose.
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady will kiss the bottom of her feet. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The 8 Million Treasure Chests of the Wizard of Baghdad. Once upon a time in the city of Baghdad, there was a wicked wizard. One day he was captured by a brave young man who was about to kill the wicked wizard, but the wizard begged for his life, saying, "If you do not kill me, I will go away forever, leaving you my great treasure." The young man let the wizard go, and the wizard opened a great door and pointed inside. There before them were 8 million treasure chests. My treasure, said the wizard, is in one of those chests. And he laughed and ran away, leaving the young man heartbroken, for it would take him many years to open all the chests. Then as he entered, he saw a beautiful tiny elf girl chained to a wall. He freed her from her chains, and she told him that she was a magic elf and would help him find the treasure. Open this one, she said, pointing to a jeweled chest. Quickly he opened it, but found it empty. Okay, the elf said, let's try that one over there.
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady tells the tender story of the magic genie and the anteater who wished for a nose job. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The Blind Man and the Elephant. Once upon a time, 3 blind men came upon an elephant. They were greatly puzzled. They knew that there was something there, but they could not see what it was. Each of them felt the elephant and then tried to describe the thing that they had run into. The first blind man, who was holding the elephant's tail, said, "This is a teeny tiny thin animal with no legs. It must be a snake." The second, who was feeling the elephant's great wrinkled legs, said, No, we have come upon a great tree." The third blind man, who was feeling the elephant's trunk, shouted, No, you are both fools. What we have found is an Italian sports car." The other 2 scoffed and shouted that he had never even seen an Italian sports car and had no idea what one would look like. Well, a refrigerator then, he decided, and they all agreed that that was what it was. But the elephant didn't make ice very well, so they traded him in on a new model real quick.
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady tells us the wonderfully fabulous story of the magic genie who got sick when he ate asparagus. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Once upon a time, there was a very eager young sorcerer's apprentice who wanted more than anything a chance to try some of the sorcerer's magic. One day, the sorcerer said that he was going away for a while, and that while he was gone, the apprentice was to keep the sorcerer's home clean, and that he was not to touch any of the sorcerer's magic equipment. The apprentice promised, but almost as soon as the sorcerer left, the young apprentice rushed to the cabinet where all of the magical spells were kept. Instantly, he enchanted a broom and made the broom do all the sweeping by itself, while he watched in great satisfaction. But soon the broom began to go wild, and the apprentice knew that if word reached the sorcerer, he would fly back home, break the spell, and hide the broom on the top shelf in the cabinet. And the apprentice knew that it is better to have a broom at the top than to see a flying sorcerer.
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady will be here to tell us the captivating story of the semi-annual Princesses and Frogs Love-In. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call Lester the Flying Grizzly Bear. Once upon a time, there was to be a competition between 2 kingdoms for the most unusual thing to be found in all the world. Each of the kings sent forth, searching for something in their kingdoms which would be unusual. Finally, in the palace of one king who had just about given up, came a voice announcing, "Lester, the Flying Grizzly Bear." And Lester bounded into the room wearing a red-spangled costume, shouting, "I am Lester, the Flying Grizzly Bear, the only flying grizzly bear in the world." And with that, Lester took off and flew around the king's chambers, out the window, around the castle, and back again. "Well," Lester said, "have you ever seen a bear do that before?" But the king only yawned and said, "You're not a grizzly bear, you're a pigeon." "Oh," said Lester. "Well, would you be interested in a pigeon who does bear impressions?"
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady will be here to tell us why some girls get raises in salary after almost every office party. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The King Who Could Not Laugh. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there lived a king who had not laughed for many years, and feeling the terrible weight of running the kingdom, he knew that he needed laughter or he would lose his mind. He called his jester in and commanded the poor fool to make him laugh. The jester tried and tried, but could not make the king laugh. Finally, the king called all the clowns in the world together. One by one, they waited to make him laugh. One great clown played his very heart out before the sad king, but when he was finished, the king still had not laughed, and so as punishment, he punched the clown in the mouth and sent him away. Saddened himself both by his failure and his punishment, the clown walked from the palace, pausing only to say to the next clown who was on his way in, "Tough audience tonight."
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady tells us the strange story of the ugly troll and Ursula and Dress. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The Happy Musician. Once upon a time, there was a happy musician who set out with his flute to play for the king. On his way, he met a drummer boy who asked where he was going. "I am going to play for the king," he said, and the drummer boy said that he would go too. They wandered, and soon they came upon a minstrel playing on his lute. When they told him that they were going to play for the king, he too joined their band. Their band continued to grow until soon there was almost 100 musicians. As they approached the city, they were stopped by a policeman who asked who they were and what they were doing. "We are happy musicians," they said, "and we have come to play for the king." And the policeman said, "There is no king in Los Angeles County," and so they played for the city council instead, but it wasn't the same.
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady tells us a clever thing to do with a bunch of credit cards and a fast car. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The Frog and the Wishing Well. Once upon a time, there was a handsome prince who had been changed into a frog by a wicked witch. Each day he wandered, hoping that someday he could break the spell and be changed back to his normal self. Of course, as he could only croak like a frog, he could tell no one of his predicament, so he would have to help himself. Then one day, as he hopped along, he came to a wishing well, but a sign on the well told him that a gold coin would have to be dropped into the well before a wish could be granted. The frog was very dejected, and then suddenly he looked around, and there on the ground was a gold coin that someone had dropped. Taking it into his froggy mouth, he climbed very slowly to the edge of the well, for the coin was very heavy. When he finally got there, he dropped the coin into the well. As it splashed into the well, a great voice from the well said, "Wish, and whatever you wish will be granted." The frog looked down into the well, opened his mouth, and said, "Croak," and so he did.
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the Story Lady tells us about the Come-As-You-Are party that resulted in 43 arrests. Time now for another visit with the Story Lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The Princess Who Was A Zhlub. Once upon a time, there was a very, very unhappy princess. More than anything else, she wanted to marry a handsome prince and live happily ever after. But all her life, she had eaten very, very rich foods, and the unhappy princess was very, very heavy. As a matter of fact, she weighed almost 300 pounds, so you can imagine that she had very little chance of marrying a handsome prince. Finally, one day, after trying every way she knew to lose weight, she went to a magician who lived in the kingdom. "Magician," she said, "I will offer you every reward that my kingdom has to offer if you will but grant me one wish." "Ask, and it shall be yours," said the magician. "Oh, magician, I do not want to be fat anymore." And the magician waved his wand, and there was a puff of smoke, and as if by magic, the princess was transformed into a slender, 300-pound beautiful girl who was 11 feet tall.
Thank you, Story Lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the story lady will be here to drain her swollen knees. Time now for another visit with the story lady.
Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to hear the story I call The Turtle and His Shell. Once upon a time, a handsome young prince was walking along the beach when he came upon a turtle who was sunning himself. "Hello, turtle," said the prince. "Tell me, for I wonder about this, why do you live in a shell?" The turtle smiled a wise, patient smile and only said, "Why do you live in a royal castle?" "Well," said the prince, "because I have almost 100 rooms and 100 servants and rich plush drapes and carpets and furnishings and every convenience that any man could ever want and beautiful serving girls to wait upon my every need." "Ah," said the turtle, "but can you carry your home on your back?" "I don't know," said the prince. "I never tried." And soon after that he did try and got a double hernia for his trouble.
Thank you, story lady. Be listening next time, boys and girls, when the story lady announces her candidacy for Marshal of Dodge City. Time now for another visit with the story lady.
Hello, children. Today's story is one I call The Golden Key. Once upon a time, when winter had put a deep blanket of snow over the ground, a poor boy ventured forth to gather some firewood in the forest. After he had gathered his load of wood, he began scraping away some snow so that he might build a fire to warm himself. And to his surprise, he found a tiny golden key buried beneath the snow. And after digging more deeply in the ground, he found an iron chest. "Now, if the key will only fit," he said, "I'm sure there must be wondrous treasures in that chest." He looked and looked for a keyhole, and at last he found it. And when he tried the key, behold, it fitted exactly. He turned the key once around, and the solid wood lid sprang open, knocking out 2 of his teeth and breaking his nose in 3 places.
Thank you, story lady. Be sure to listen next time, boys and girls, when the story lady will tell you how to relax while operating a pneumatic sledgehammer. Now it's time for today's visit with the story lady.
Today's story is one I call Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, there lived a king and queen who were very good. But they had made an enemy of a cruel witch who put a curse on their daughter, the princess. The curse was that if the beautiful princess ever pricked her finger with a needle, she would fall fast asleep and would never awaken. So the king immediately banned all needles from the kingdom. But one day, the beautiful princess stumbled across a seemingly abandoned Quonset hut, left behind by a band of wandering Quonsets. In the hut, she found a sewing machine, and, being a normal girl, she sat down and started sewing. She, of course, pricked her finger with the needle and immediately fell asleep. One afternoon, a few years later, a handsome prince came by and noticed the sleeping princess. She looked so beautiful, he couldn't resist leaning over and giving her a kiss. Afterwards, he hung around for a few days and eventually left. Today, the beautiful princess is at Mount Sinai Hospital, where she is being fed intravenously.
Thank you, story lady. Be sure and tune in next time, boys and girls, when the story lady tells the happy and romantic story of the Dempsey-Firpo fight.